Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another Boxcast. And as we're going through a reading of the Church Lie and the Biblical Alternative, and linking it together with what is trending in the church, okay? There in Churchland. If you want to chime in today, comments and questions, mail at tanc.com, mail at tanc.com, or go to our Facebook page. And I've got to start loading up and being more involved in MeWe or whatever it is too. I've been invited by some of our readers to join over there, and we have a couple of accounts over there, and so I'll have to look at what format maybe we could do over there to facilitate more communication with those watching live. And the Boxcast continuing on today in our discussion yesterday, and we'll start where we left off with a comment that Andy sent us on Facebook, and I had read as part of what's trending the life story of a young lady who survived an abortion. And she had quoted somebody that said life was all about your story that God is writing, and explained how all of that was grounded in what I would call, that's a very ancient concept, metaphysical concept, and that is reality as narrative, or reality as a story, okay? And all of reality is a pre-written novel or story by some god, gods, or the force, Mother Nature, whatever. Andy had a comment on that, on her first paragraph after the quote that stated, I don't believe God originally wrote abortion into my life, as God is the creator of life, but when it was introduced by man, or in my case a woman, he rewrote the story of my life around it to create the story of a life that is more intricate, more redemptive, more grace-filled than anything anyone else could have planned or written. All right? And as I pointed out, the problem that you get into is then, so for whatever reason, God rewrote your story and not other people's story. Okay? It also begs the question about this new, quote, Christian, unquote, movie that's out about some young man who had a diving accident or something and was going to die and was actually dead for like 40 minutes, and because of the prayers of the family who, were avid churchgoers, he was raised back to life and is now completely normal, and there's a movie out about that now. Begs the question, what about all of the other loving moms that prayed to God to bring their son or daughter back, and God didn't answer that prayer, if in fact, that's the case? Andy answers it this way, past my question in regard to that. Andy answers, sorry, you can't have it both ways. If God writes your story, he writes all of it, even the abortion attempt, right? If God is writing the story, then anything man introduces into it only happens because God first had to write that man would introduce it. This is the problem with predeterminism. There can be no human agency, okay, whatsoever. However, man can never know that his input originated with himself. The fact that he can even consider the question is evidence enough that predeterminism cannot be reality. It cut off, you ran out of time. I was rolling on the floor when you read that email. Oh, okay. He was talking about yesterday's session, as it often does. The live streaming runs out, and but we're not quite finished with the boxcast. So, that's Andy's point on that, a very good point, all right? And that is actually church, at least the Protestant church, is founded on this reality as pre-written narrative, or redemptive narrative, or metaphysical narrative, or meta-narrative. That is the historical redemptive hermeneutic, all right? And when it gets right down to the brass tacks, most pastors in the Reformed tradition, when they're preaching from the Bible, they are preaching from that perspective. It's just a lot of people out in the parishioners, that is, out in the congregation, don't realize that. Okay, so continuing on here, and we may not get to everything today. I told you we got an email from somebody, and I read it yesterday, and so I've been going back and forth, okay, with this guy, and this, so we've got a subtitle, okay, we got a subtitle for today's boxcast, and that would be how church pastors roll, okay, how church pastors roll. So we got this post on paulspassingthoughts.com, and I'll read that first. Let's go to paulspassingthoughts.com, and we will read that first, okay? And so apparently somebody left our 3 questions track in this guy's church, and so our correspondence back and forth is interesting conversation, all right? And again, the subtitle for today's boxcast is how church pastors roll, okay? And let's see how they roll. All right. So he sends me this email, and it reads, Mr. Dosey, I am aware of you because of 2 occasions your Do You Believe a True Gospel, a gospel test tracts have been placed in our church literature rack and men's restroom, and without our approval. Without our approval. In both cases, I have removed them. I don't know if you or someone associated with you is placing these tracts, but I have a few questions, okay? 1, why would someone place tracts in a church without the permission of that church's leadership? Okay? 2, I am unclear what the goal of the tract is. I went to 3questions.weebly.com, and I found it to be confusing to even me. I was seminary trained. please give me a call I changed the phone number. If you'd rather not talk, that's fine. In that case, please stop placing tracts in our church without approval. In him, a church pastor. Then I replied, Dear church pastor, and thank you, Andy, for editing this and, putting pictures in and whatnot. Dear church pastor, the 3 questions tract is widely distributed by our ministry, and I have no idea who placed them in your church. However, it seems likely to me that it is someone who attends your church in some capacity. Thank you for the offer to talk, but I prefer written correspondence in this case. You pose question 1 as if common decency was somehow violated, but I am not surprised by that. Though your parishioners pay for your salary and the maintaining of your institutional infrastructure, you are incredulous that anyone would distribute information without the permission of leadership. This, of course, is indicative of the hierarchical, top-down, truth as authority caste system that is church. While parishioners pay your salary and probably paid for your seminary degree as well, you have the authority to take away their eternal salvation if they don't obey God's anointed, or as Al Mohler stated it, those, quote, preordained by God to save his people from ignorance. Of course, I think all of that is laughable, and I am delighted to find out some attending church dare to think for themselves. Thank you for the note of encouragement. Secondly, I am not surprised the tract confuses you. In no way does your seminary degree cast doubt on the clarity of justification by new birth as opposed to justification by faith, but rather brings about an expectation of confusion. Many examples could be given regarding your ignorance about salvation, an ignorance that you were paid well for, but I will only cite one. On your website, you state, the gospel is the good news that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, died for our sins and rose again, eternally triumphant over his enemies, so that there is now no condemnation for those who believe, but only everlasting joy. That's the gospel. Yet, while stating that there is now no condemnation, you state in other places on the website that Christians are still in need of the gospel daily. That's because justification by faith is a progressive justification that calls for a perpetual returning to the gospel for, quote, present sin. Obviously, if there is present sin, there is present condemnation. Or it wouldn't be sin. Okay? In the Bible, you can't separate sin and condemnation. If you sin, it brings with it condemnation. Okay? Obviously, if Christians still need to be saved, they are presently under condemnation. Yeah, if your salvation isn't final, you're absolutely still under condemnation. Your salvation is even finished. To the degree that your salvation isn't finished, you're obviously under some sort of condemnation. All right? It is apparent that the leadership of your church follows John Piper, who states in no uncertain terms that Christians continue to need salvation. And, of course, this necessarily requires the, quote, ordinary means of grace that can only be obtained through church leadership. It is one thing to believe a false gospel, but it is something else altogether to be leading many others in the false gospel of justification by faith as well. Not only is your own blood on your hands, but that of your parishioners. you would do well to re-examine the tract and make every effort to understand it. If you have any questions concerning the gospel, by all means, feel free to call, and I give my phone number. Well, okay, so he returns my email. And this is where we get into how church pastors roll, okay? Me and Andy, or Andy, is it Andy and I, okay? I think Andy and I. Andy and I have seen this for years now. This is a pattern. Before, I didn't know whether this guy was going to reply to this email or not, this pastor. But I knew this if he did, because it's a pattern that we've seen for 10 years now. Okay? So what he's going to do, all right, he's going to reply, and he's going to begin his reply with some blanket statement of authority. Okay? Irregardless of any proof or points or statement that I made, he is going to wave his magic wand of authority and wipe all of that out. You know, on his authority, he's going to proclaim the points that I made wrong. Okay? And that's what he did. So, yeah, he replies to the email. Actually, there's 2 replies. Okay? And so, let me go to email here. And I'm going to go to sent. Go to the emails I've sent. Okay? So, let me see here. The whole stream is on here. Okay. He replies, Mr. Dosey, it's funny, period. Virtually everything in your email is wrong. Thus saith the pastor, you're wrong. Okay? Doesn't address any of my points. You're wrong. Okay? If you want to have a constructive conversation about the gospel, I'm game. Here's how I play. So here's how he plays. Okay? And that's the second point. Okay? The first point is they're going to make some blanket statement of authority declaring you wrong. Thus says the pastor with the seminary degree. Thus saith the pastor, you're wrong. Let it be written, let it be done, So, first comes the blanket statement of authority. I'm wrong just because he says so. Okay? Because he has God-given authority. Alright? As we talk about in the book, these guys think they're ordained of God to have, authority over salvation on earth. Okay? Virtually everything in your email is wrong. Wow. Okay? If you want to have a constructive conversation about the gospel, I'm game. Here's how I play. So now we get into the second thing that they do. All right? They set out to set the agenda. Okay? They frame the rules. Here's how we're going to do it. Again, where does that come from? What gives him the stinking right to set the agenda? Okay? And expect me to quote his word play according to his words. Again, what are we talking about? The big A, authority. He just assumes that if we're going to have a debate, he can lay out how we're going to play. Why? Again, it's this authority thing, okay, that saturates their mind and their reality and their thinking, okay? We'll get to these 4 points, okay? We'll get to these 4 points shortly, okay? And then my reply. Well, let me just go ahead and read it, and then I'll make my points. So here's how he plays. 1, let's define our terms as we go so we can be efficient and communicate well. Okay? 2, something cannot be both true and not true at the same time. Okay? 3, the plain reading of God's Word in its context rules. The plain reading of God, so the plain reading of God's Word in context rules. That's interesting. 4, the less clear passages are explained by the more clear passages. Okay? All right. Fair enough. When is a good time to call you? And then he signs it, blah, blah, blah. All right? Here's my reply, okay? Before we proceed, please answer the following question. All right? Before we proceed, this is my reply. Before we proceed, please answer the following question. Are you a Protestant in the Reformed tradition? In what confessions or other documents accurately profess church orthodoxy and the biblical gospel? Okay? Well, he replies to that. And let's go there. All right, so what am I doing here? What am I doing here? I'm trying to get him to commit to a standard of truth or a prism or presuppositions that he bases what he believes on, the basis for his ideology. I'm trying to get him to commit to that. Well, guess what? He's not going to do it. Why? Don't miss this. This is the crux. Okay? This is it. All right? Because their truth, and this goes for church, period. All right? Church truth is not predicated on objective truth or objective facts. It's predicated on authority. All right? So he's not going to commit, none of these guys are. Now, yeah. If you go to his church, and you're walking through the line, the greeting line, gag, that all of the church pastors do as people leave, gag. Anyway, just flashbacks to where, to my church days, okay? My goodness. So anyway, if you're walking through the line and you walk up to shake his hand and you say, Pastor, are you a Protestant in the Reformed tradition? He's going to stick his chest out and say, well, of course. Of course I am. Now, in that context, they're going to be willing to commit to an objective criteria. Okay? Now, if they know they're going to get into a debate, all right, with somebody who might know what they're talking about, they're not going to commit to a objective criteria. All right? They're not going to do it. Okay? Why? Because their so-called truth, their so-called gospel, okay, their so-called teaching is not, absolutely not based on objective criteria, but merely authority. What authority? The authority supposedly granted to them by God over salvation on earth in His stead. So, you know, authority over salvation by proxy. That's church. Authority is truth. Okay? So like, you know, it's John Calvin's power of the keys. Whatever you bind on earth is bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth is loosed in heaven. Okay? You know, you'll hear sermons where they'll talk about, as a parishioner, your whole duty before God is to obey the pastor, and if he made a poor judgment call or he's wrong, he'll answer to God. It's between God and the elders. Okay? Then you've got James MacDonald, who was going to preach at some Southern Baptist pastors conference here in 2019, but was disinvited because, you know, him and his elders agreed that he would go on some sabbatical, okay? To, of course, protect the bottom line of the institutional church's finances because of all the drama that's constantly going on up there, all right? So, to that point, they invited, you know, what has James MacDonald said in the past? He stood up between all of his church campuses, which at the time constituted 15,000 people, and stated unequivocally, when the elders speak unanimously together, they are speaking for God. That's what he said. He even prefaced it with, that's as serious gets. So if the elders of your church all agree on something and speaketh it forward, you know, speak life into you, okay, they're actually speaking for God. And it carries every bit of the authority as if it came directly from God. Hang on to that thought. Because who else believes that? And now we're getting ready to read this pastor's response to my question, okay? And like I said, he's not going to commit to an objective criteria, okay? Here we go. All right. Mr. Dosey, I am a Protestant. One, I am a Protestant. He's very concise. I am a Protestant. Two, by nature of being a Protestant, I am not Roman Catholic. So to the degree that I am not Roman Catholic, I am Reformed, but not part of any Reformed tradition. You got that? Okay? By nature of being a Protestant, I am not a Roman Catholic. So to the degree that I am not Roman Catholic, I am Reformed, but not part of any Reformed tradition. Okay, so what was one of his rules in the previous email? Something can't be both true and false at the same time. What did he just state here? Okay. To the degree that I'm not Catholic, I'm Reformed, but not part of any Reformed tradition. Well, if you're Reformed because you're this much not Catholic, okay, or this much not Catholic, doesn't that make you part of the Reformed tradition in some way? Okay, so this is what these guys try to do, okay? Is it deliberate, or are they just mimicking what they've been trained to do all their life? It could be either one, okay? But what they want to do, when you've got an issue with the elders of a church, okay, and you go into the lion's den, all right, or the wolf's den, as the little lamb that they think you are, never forget this and be sure of this. Their first goal is to confuse you. Okay? Their first goal is to confuse you and to keep you confused. Okay? And in the midst of your confusion, and of course this is, a lot of you listening here are going to immediately recognize this as an occult and cult technique of communication and deception. Okay? So what they're going to do, they're going to immediately try to confuse you and deliberately say things to you that are like, well, wait a minute. And then in that midst of that confusion, they're going to keep throwing statements at you. Okay? And basically, in trying to win an argument with these people, you're just dazed. Okay? Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like going into the ring against Ronda Rousey, and she head kicks you, and then tries to, you know, once she head kicks you, and you're that far from passing out, she can make that conversation go any way she wants to, right? Kind of the same deal, all right? So, basically, they're masters at controlling the agenda. They're masters of controlling the rules of the arena to get the final result that they want. Okay? If you go to church, okay, it's church's way or the highway. There is no possible way whatsoever to have an honest conversation with these people to bring about some result. Okay? Three, I am technically a dispensationalist, which is interesting, which means to some degree he's a confused Calvinist. Okay? Also, I don't know what dispensationalism has to do with a discussion about justification in any way, shape, or form. Okay? 4, the only document that accurately professes anything on my end is the Bible and our church constitution, bylaws, and statement of faith. Alright? What's wrong with this picture? Okay? So I've got a couple of ways I can go about this. Okay? I can say, okay, then since your church constitution and bylaws and statement of faith constitutes an accurate confession or profession of the biblical gospel, that will be the premise of our discussion. And by the way, he thinks I'm going to call him and have a conversation. No. I'll be happy to come to your church And what an opportunity to use me, moi, as a living sacrifice in order to show your congregation a more vivid view of the true gospel. Yes, let me lay myself on the altar of your gospel of truth. Now, if we have this discussion, I'm coming to your church on a Wednesday evening or Sunday evening or some alternative evening, and you and I are going to sit down in front of your congregation and have a gospel discussion. And you can give me a learning right in front of all that congregation. Okay? And I hope you have a big savings account, because you might need it. The church constitution, bylaws, and statement of faith, using that for a discussion. Oh wow, what a mess. He doesn't even remember in my first replied email to him, just a cursory, oh my goodness, just a cursory observation of their statement of faith, and I just picked out the one thing that was a blatant contradiction. Okay? Not only that, as far as their church constitution and bylaws and statement of faith, they make John Piper a part of that in talking about fodder. Okay? Wow. All right? So, you know, I can agree to those terms. And what better way for him to invite me to his church to ask questions and have a discussion about their statement of faith in front of all the folks. Okay? Wow, what an awesome teaching opportunity. Okay? It would be in my book. So, you know, that is what I am going to offer. But I've got a question to you, for you about number 2. Okay? About number 2. By nature of being Protestant, and I'm going to ask him a few more questions just to drive the nail in a little bit deeper. Okay? You know, I'm a little bit skittish because this is almost too easy. Okay? I'm somewhat disappointed. All right? So anyway, by nature of being a Protestant, I am not Roman Catholic. So to that degree, I am not Roman Catholic. I am Reformed. All right, so in regard to this, when all of the elders agree in unison, they speak for God. No Roman Catholicism in that ideology, eh? Okay, no, that's not the least bit Roman Catholic to say that your elders, when they agree together, speak for God. Okay? No Roman Catholicism in that. Okay? And again, I'm somewhat disappointed. This is almost too easy. I might have a few comments here. Let's go to email. All right. And so, let me see here. Let me see. You know why I was laughing so hard when you read that email? He doesn't know. I'll debate them. I'll go up and let me see here. You're fuming listening to this guy's responses. Okay, so Andy's not a happy camper. If he thinks he's right, then he's got nothing to lose by having the debate in front of his congregation. You got it, pal. You got it. Let's do this thing. Let's bring it. Okay, so that's the offer that, and Andy did a wonderful job of editing that thing. And Andy, if you're listening, put the email. I've got like 4 emails for you, pal. Put your most recent email in there so I can forward you his responses, because Andy did a beautiful job of posting the conversation thus far, and I want to post that bad boy up as soon as I do my last response after the box cast. I'm going to want to post all of that up. Okay, let's see what else we might have here. Andy posted in the church lie, and Andy has been posting the live vid in the church lie, and that's a good place for you to comment, y'all, if you're part of that page. And again, do I keep forgetting to mention this? For those of you who join our Facebook page, free book. Okay? You gotta, I swear I've mentioned this before, but if you join our Facebook page, our group there, the Church Live Facebook group, if you join that group, you get a free book. You gotta have the book to be able to get on there and have a discussion, right? Alrighty though, so we covered all of that. What else can we cover? I have another link on Paul's Passing Thoughts under topics that I'm probably not going to have time to get to today. Alright, so let me see here. I want to mention, because we've discussed this before, and I'm just going to Google it because somehow I lost the link. Okay, SBC responds to Houston Chronicle abuse article. Okay, enter. Southern Baptist heads calls for reform, potential removal of multiple Houston churches. Okay, alright, let's read this. Okay, alright, Southern Baptist head calls for reforms, potential removal of multiple Houston churches. Okay, so basically the SBC is going to, let's see, Nashville, the president of the Southern Baptist Convention on Monday evening called for a season of lament, sorrow, and repentance over a sexual abuse crisis, and provided a list of 10 churches, including Second Baptist Church in Houston, that he said should be scrutinized for their handling of sexual abuses and potentially removed from the nation's largest Baptist group. Woo, yes. 2 of the other 10 churches are in Houston in addition to Second Baptist, a 60,000 member congregation that has long been pastored by former SBC President Ed Young. The other churches are Brentwood Baptist Church and Cathedral of Faith. Okay. Brothers and sisters, there's a problem, current President J.D. Greer said at a speech to other Southern Baptist leaders in Nashville. This is not a fabricated story made up by people with a secular agenda. Okay. Did I lose the article? Yeah, I got clipped by a pop-up. Okay, so look, okay, look, all right, we'll look more into that, but this is putrid, Okay, this is absolutely putrid. They've known this has been going on, and to what degree, for years and years and years and years and years. SNAP and other organizations have publicized this, so on and so forth. Now, okay, what the church does, it has their accountants check the books, and if this is going to hurt the institution financially, okay, they're going to pretend to take some kind of action, and boy, okay, now, you know, they're oh my goodness, okay, are they actually talking about interchurch excommunication, where a denomination will excommunicate a church from its fellowship? Oh my goodness, what hypocritical fodder that is for discussion. And we will address that tomorrow in the church lie. And so basically, I think that's enough for today's program. Really don't have time to get into other things that I want to get into. But we'll continue tomorrow to look at this. Hope you enjoyed our Boxcast today, found it interesting. Chime in, let us know what's on our mind. And until then, until we meet again tomorrow, go forth aggressively, loving God and others aggressively with no fear of condemnation. Okay? And so, until we meet again tomorrow, have a great God-honoring afternoon.